Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Brazil once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the Brazilian beers that I bought in my recent order from Beer Dome down in the Netherlands. So as I've told you in the previous Brazilian reviews, I've been really impressed with the quality of stuff that I've had from Brazil so far. I'd long heard that they had a very vibrant and really nice craft beer scene, and the beers that I've tried so far seem to have proven that. So if you get the chance to try some Brazilian beers, I highly recommend that you do. But like I said earlier, I bought these Brazilian beers from Beer Dome in the Netherlands. It's an awesome web shop. They've got a crazy selection of really random stuff, and it seems that they've got a fairly steady supply of Brazilian things. So I will be doing another Brazilian order at some point later in the year, and fingers crossed we can keep doing a steady stream of Brazilian reviews here on the channel actually. But the one we're looking at today is the last of my lighter beers, and over the next while you will see Imperial Stouts appearing every so often. But like I say, we will do another order from Beer Dome later in the year. But check out the link to their web shop and have a go at some of the Brazilian stuff. It's really nice to see that some Latin American beers are making it across here to Europe. They are a little bit more expensive because the Latin American Association doesn't have a trade deal with the European Union, but maybe that's something that will come in the future, and hopefully the likes of Beer Dome can get us some beers from Argentina and Chile and Mexico and the other Latin American countries as well. Fingers crossed. But yeah, back to Brazil for this one anyway. For this review, we are going to have a look at a beer from another brewery I've never tried anything from before. This beer does seem to be very highly rated though, and the brewery is also very highly thought of. And for this one, we are going to go to a little city called Juiz de Fora, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I apologise in advance for any bad Portuguese pronunciations in this video. It's a language that I am not familiar with in the slightest. But yeah, we are going to go to a little place called Juiz de Fora, which is a little bit to the north of Rio de Janeiro and a bit to the south of Belo Horizonte in the southeast of Brazil. Not the very south, right enough, but we're going to have a look at my first beer from Spartacus Brewing. Now, this particular beer is called Dust to Dust. It comes in at 7% ABV, and they're describing this one as an American sour ale. So this one contains raspberries, guava, Madagascan vanilla and lactose. So I'm wondering if this beer is going to be quite similar to the big fruity sours that we get from the likes of Fermentarana, Morgondagens, and things like that here in Sweden. So yeah, I'll have to say I'm very, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. But yeah, the artwork on it's absolutely beautiful, I have to say. And I'm just very, very curious to see how it turns out. This beer is very highly rated, and I think raspberry and guava could be a very interesting combination for sure. But yeah, let's get started on this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Spartacus Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for the Brazilian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite steadily at the moment because of that order I made from Beer Dome, and fingers crossed we can keep that happening over the years. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Spartacus Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So as I mentioned earlier, Spartacus Brewing are based in a little city called Juiz de Fora, which is between Belo Horizonte to the north and Rio de Janeiro to the south, and it's just over the border from Rio de Janeiro into the state of Minas Gerais in southeastern Brazil. But the brewery was founded back in 2018 by Cassio Valinotti and Rafael Oliveira, both of whom come from backgrounds in engineering. Now, Cassio actually has an interesting story about how he got into beer, and it's actually a little bit similar to mine because there's a bit of a Scottish connection in there. But Cassio apparently lived in Aberdeen for a while. I used to study chemistry there, and it was there that he became familiar with Brewdog and the Punk IPA. And apparently he used to drive up to Ellen quite often and have a few beers with his friends and stuff like this. But when he returned home to Brazil, unfortunately there was just a lack of these American-style craft beers, and he decided that the solution to this was to start home brewing and brew them for himself. And then Raphael joined him in the home brewing game, And then they eventually turned professional together. So yeah, quite a common story. Homebrewers turned professional. At the moment though, they're still quite a small production brewery. They're producing around 10,000 litres of beer per month, but they're expanding their capacity at the moment because they're starting to export to Europe and America from what I understand. And they're planning to open up a tap room in the city a little bit later on this year. But they've already invested quite a lot in their barrel aging program. They imported a lot of barrels from Kentucky to do a lot of bourbon barrel aging, so hopefully we can try a few of their stouts and things like that in the future. That would be very, very cool. But Casio was saying as well that the name of the brewery is chosen to motivate, inspire and delight, but the branding is used to kind of inspire courage, valour, hope and self-knowledge apparently. And he said that this tied in quite well with the sort of Spartan imagery, if you like, hence the name Spartacus Brewing. So they wanted a nice kind of strong and eye-catching sort of branding, if you like. So that apparently was the main reason behind using the name Spartacus. But as of March 2021, when I'm producing this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beers, and you know, there's a lot of hazy New England IPAs in there, some fruity sours like this, and some imperial stouts and various other bits and bobs actually. But like I said, they seem to be a very well respected brewery in Brazil these days, and hopefully we can get a few more of their beers up here in Europe at some point soon. Maybe, who knows, I would love to go down to Brazil and visit it. Who knows, maybe I can even go and visit their tap room at some stage and film a little out and about video for you. That would be really cool to do some videos down with down in Brazil. I think that would be awesome. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Spartacus Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. And a big thank you as well to Casio from the brewery for giving me that information that I've put in the history section for you. I was trying to find stuff on these guys, but it was all in Portuguese, which was quite difficult, but I wrote an email to Casio and he came back and answered it all like really nicely. So yeah, big thank you to Casio for helping me out with the data and stuff like that for this video. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this before we open it up. As you can see, it's got the big kind of Easter Island statue guy on it, which I think is very, very cool. Easter Island, if I remember rightly, belongs to Ecuador. I would love to go to Ecuador as well. I've heard it's beautiful. I'd love to see the Galapagos and go out to Easter Island, but Easter Island is a way out in the middle of nowhere from what I understand. But yeah, the artwork on this can is beautiful. I think I'll need to keep a hold of this one for sure. But it does tell you a little bit on the back about the beer as well. There you can see Spartacus Brewing, and so this stuff is in Portuguese, but I did stick it into Google Translate before the review so that I can read it out to you. So this might not be wholly accurate, but take it with a pinch of salt. So it says here from the translation, "From dust to dust, from dust to dust, everything returns. The difference exists in what can be done between this, how bravely we fight and believe in a greater triumph. Dust to Dust brings a creamy base through the use of oats and lactose and an assertive acidity. Massive additions of raspberry and guava bring intense flavours and aromas of these fruits that are balanced by the Madagascan vanilla and the creamy lactose, a work that refers to raspberry and guava mascarpone." So yeah, interesting. I'm guessing though goiaba is maybe something more Brazilian than mascarpone. That's probably the one of the errors in the translation, right enough. But yeah, that kind of sums up what's on the beer. This one, is this meant to be like parental guidance or something like this? I don't know. A tin style. Or keep refrigerated, I think that's what it's saying. But yeah, should be pretty cool, this one. But this is a 473 milliliter can, or 1 US pint, and I think this cost me maybe about €7 or something to buy this, maybe a little bit more, 7 or 8 euros, let's say €7.50. So that translates to roughly just under £7 sterling, and in American dollars, what, about $9, something like that for the can, just to give you an idea. But like I said, the price of the Brazilian beers is due mainly because the EU, due to the fact that the EU doesn't have a trade deal with the South American Association. So yeah, that's probably one of the main reasons. But from what my Brazilian friend Fabrizio told me, craft beer in Brazil is actually quite expensive, especially relative to wages, because their economy isn't as developed, obviously, so they don't earn quite as much as we do here in Europe. But yeah, so it is quite, from what I gather, it is quite expensive, and I think they import quite a lot of ingredients as well. Quite a lot of breweries are using American hops and stuff like this, but they are starting to develop their own hop producing regions and stuff like this. I'm sure they've got malteries down there though, because they produce lots of grains. That's one of the next big areas I think in world brewing will be like some Argentine hops. They've got a whole load of land in the plains in Argentina that could produce some really interesting hops, definitely. But yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. A 7% American style sour ale with raspberries, guava, vanilla and lactose in the brew. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm very curious about this, I have to say. So, and it smells very good. It smells good. I think this is going to be lovely. Look at this. That looks very, very nice. Let me just sugar up. But there's little bits of fruit floating around in this one, but when it's been in the fridge for quite a wee while, I think that makes sense in honesty. But I'll tell you something, that looks like a lovely beer. Let me just put this back so that my OCD is happy. I think that is about right. That is about right. But yeah, look at this then. As you can see, before when we poured the beer, it came out with about a quarter finger of a very kind of creamy coloured head, a very thin creamy head that is just fading away to be nothing, and now it's just like a plain kind of flat layer just on top of that. But yeah, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. You can see a few little ones going up towards the surface there. But I mean, overall, it looks very nice. This just looks like a fruit juice, to be quite honest with you. It looks a little bit like a smoothie. I don't even really know how to describe the colour of that. Is it a little bit kind of peachy, like a sort of mixed tropical fruit juice, something like that? Yeah, but it's definitely got a nice little bit of haze to it. That will be down to the oats, of course. Remember, when it comes to the colour of your beers, there's a few factors at play here. 1, the type of malts that you use. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But again, that's dependent in the first instance on the type of hops that you use. But then barrel aging and fruit adjuncts can also play a role. So obviously, this beer is getting its colouring from a combination of raspberries and guava. So yeah, I think this looks, I think that kind of makes sense, absolutely. But you can see little bits of oat fragment kind of floating around in this one. It's all natural though. I'm not going to complain about that. The beer has been in the fridge and it's also come from Brazil as well. So, you know, these sour beers tend to hold up fairly well actually, I have to say. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice, this one. A lovely kind of dark peachy colour almost. I think that's how I would describe the colour of this one. But yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer, to be honest, when you consider that it's a big fruity sour. You expect random colours like this. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. This one really smells, in terms of its vibe that it has, it's different fruits and things of course, but this beer really reminds me of the stuff that you get from the likes of Brewski, Morgendagens, Duck Pond, you know, all of these kind of Fermenterarna, all of these kind of sour beer breweries that we have here in Sweden now. It does remind me quite a bit of some of these Nordic sours. But what I always like about these beers is the sour beers like this, the kind of modern fruity sours, if we can call them that, they tend to be really straight shooting in terms of their flavour profile and aroma, but they just taste lovely. You know, you're not going to get the same complexity out of one of these beers that you're going to get from, say, a Flanders Red or a barrel-aged Imperial Sour or something like this. These beers tend to be very, very straight shooting, but they just taste really, really nice actually. At least in my opinion. Some people might disagree with that, but yeah, it looks absolutely lovely and it smells great as well. So let's try and break down the aroma of this one for you then before we get stuck into it. But yeah, straight away with this one, you can smell the guava and the raspberry just mixing together. You've got that lovely juiciness and slight sharpness of the raspberry kind of sitting at the top of the nose, but underneath the guava is really just kind of sitting there. I've always found guava to be quite green almost actually. I've always found guava has quite a green kind of quality to it. It's like a slightly more green tasting it's a slightly more kind of green tasting mango. I was going to say Malmö. I live very close to Malmö here in Sweden, so it's like a green tasting mango. Pink guava is really interesting as well. It's got a little bit more kind of sharpness to it from what I remember. But yeah, the aroma, the fruity aroma out of this beer is great. There's a few other kind of, you know, with these sour beers, you always get a little bit other fruits coming out of it. There's a bit of a kind of apricot-y note in there, maybe a wee touch of papaya or something like that, and maybe even a little figgy kind of element to it, and candied strawberry. So you do get little elements of this, but you can tell that it's you know, it's raspberry all the way, and it is guava. And then just you've got these other little things that I'm mentioning are kind of subtleties, to be honest with you. But yeah, the backbone of this beer then, I would say, is definitely the oats. You can really smell that lovely oaty smoothness in this beer, absolutely. It almost smells just a little bit like yogurt, to be honest with you, like petit filou yogurts. There's a nice kind of fruit, creamy yogurt. That's what I really get out of this beer. You can definitely smell a bit of the sweeter vanilla in there as well, which is interesting. And yeah, there is a little bit of a kind of, there is a wee touch of like a bread crusty element to this beer, a little bit of a kind of fresh, doughy, white bready, bread crusty sort of thing. So yeah, the fruity side of things, I think, yeah, the fruity side of things is really interesting. But the fruity, and the way it almost just smells like a fruit yogurt, this one, or like a fruit smoothie or milkshake or something like this. That's the vibe that this beer really gives off. In terms of hoppiness, I don't think this beer has hops in it, and this is quite a common thing to do with sour beers these days, in Sweden at least. When it comes to these Nordic sours, I've had some from Finland as well. When it comes to these sort of almost Nordic sours, if we can call them that, they're calling this one an American style sour. But when it comes to these modern style sours, it is quite common not to put hops in them. When it comes to these, you know, the fruity gozes and Berliner Weisses and stuff like this, the original ones did have a little bit of hop in them. Low alpha acid ones, those such as Hallertau and Tettnanger, because that meant that it didn't take the focus away from the sourness of the beer. And quite often they would use old hops as well that had lost a little bit of their kind of potency. You know, it's the beta acids in hops that determines how long the kind of bitterness in a hop lasts for. But yeah, this one smells, it does, regardless of whether one of these sour beers has hops in it, you always get a little bit of an almost placebo effect with them. So for me, I do get a good little bit of grassiness out of this beer and a little touch of floral quality. But otherwise, in terms of a green component to the beer, if we can call it that, there's not much kind of else going on that way. It's all about the fruit. It's all about the kind of oaty notes and a bit of the vanilla in there. The vanilla, incidentally, comes out right in the middle of the nose and just mixes in with the oats, and I think it's the vanilla that's contributing to the idea of a kind of yogurty aroma in this beer. But yeah, take a little bit of time and ponder over the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. But we're going to have a taste of this one now. So this one is Dust to Dust, a 7% fruited sour with raspberry, guava, Madagascan vanilla and oats in it. Madagascan vanilla and lactose, sorry, not lactose. Brain is terrible today, these guys. This is why I shouldn't film reviews when I'm tired. But yeah, raspberries, guava, Madagascan vanilla and lactose in it. 7% from Spartacus Brewing in Juiz de Fora in Brazil. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, felicidades, and thank you again to Casio. Ooh, that's nice. It's got a wee bit of a puckering quality to it, but that is what you want. Ooh, that gets a big thumbs up from me. That's a really good sour. That is very nice. Casio was a bit worried when I spoke to him in the email. So when I wrote to him, he was a bit worried about how long this beer had been in the can. I can't remember how long he said it was, but I think it's been in the can at least like 9 months or something like this. Has been in the can a little bit, but this one, it's held up very, very well, I have to say. I can imagine that it's even better fresh, to be honest, but it does come out really nicely as it is. And yeah, it doesn't feel as if it's oxidized or anything like this. Because if it's oxidized, it's just like really, really sharp. This one does have a wee bit of a puckering quality to it, but it's actually got a very nice juiciness to it. And they do mention in the blurb in this one that it has a wee bit of acidity. And you want a wee touch of that in a sour beer like this. But I'm just going to say to them, this is beautifully executed, absolutely. So I'm going to stick the rest of this in, and I'm just going to keep an eye, because with how long it's been in the fridge, I would suspect there might be big chunky bits of sediment, but no. No, actually, I'm surprised at that. There's nothing on the bottom of the can on the inside there. So yeah, this beer has held up incredibly well. It's great, as I say, you get little bits of oat and fruit and stuff floating around in it, but it's all natural, you know, nothing wrong with that. But this beer does get a big thumbs up for me. This is one of the best ones that we've had out of the Brazilian mini series so far, definitely. You know, for me, this is almost the stereotypical beer that you would think would come from Brazil. We hear a lot about the big fruity things that you get down there, and you know, this one just fulfills so many stereotypes that we've heard about the Brazilian brewing thing. Big, juicy, fruity things, just, you know, big flavour, nice and smooth. Yeah, it's really great, this one. So yeah, my hat off to Spartacus Brewing. I'll definitely be getting another beer or two from these guys in the next Brazilian box, absolutely. But yeah, where do we start with this one then? Like I said earlier, this beer, it's very straight shooting in terms of its flavour profile, but it's just really well executed, and you know, it's great. It really is good. So yeah, let's break down the flavour of this one then. So in the middle third of your palate, you get that really nice kind of smooth sort of white bready base to the beer. You can just feel that being the very backbone. There's a little bit of pale malt in there, absolutely. But on top of that, you start to get the oaty smoothness there, and then you can feel the lactose and the oaty qualities just sitting on top of that. So pardon me, you've just got a two-layer base to this beer, a soft, pale malty, white bready sort of thing, then the smooth mixture of oats and lactose just sitting on top of that. So the middle third of your palate actually feels fairly thick, if you like, but it's very straight shooting. And you know, the further you go into the aftertaste, you will notice the vanilla starting to come out. The vanilla comes out on the front half of that middle third of your palate, and you can feel it again just thickening up the beer. Perhaps in the very centre of your palate you will get a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy sort of vibe out of the beer. But yeah, I really like how that goes together in this one, definitely. But the malt base complements everything else in this beer just very nicely. I think this is an awesome beer. Yeah, I really like this one for sure. The malty side of it is done very well. It comes across as a little bit more smoothie like than yogurty like the more that you drink of it, but yeah, there's definitely a good little bit of that vibe coming out of this beer, for sure. I think this one's just really well executed. Yeah, but I don't think there's too much else to say about the malty side of this beer in the middle of your palate. Bready base, oaty, lactosey kind of quality sitting on top of that, a bit of a nice kind of vanilla oiliness, on the front half of that middle third of your palate, and then a little bit of a kind of Werther's Original sort of butter candy type thing in the centre of your palate. That's the alcohol notes coming out of this one, and it's 7%. This one, for me at least, compared to what we get here in Sweden, this one is a little bit higher in alcohol compared to similar beers over here in Europe. So that would explain a little bit of that kind of butter candy sort of thing. That's your alcohol content coming out of the beer. But yeah, if you go to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it thickens up a little bit, and you can feel the oats just really thicken up a lot on that border region. You do get a tiny little bit of bread crust, but for me that's quite minimal. But on the back third of your palate, again, you get you do get more of an oaty character there, but it feels a little bit drier and a little bit more kind of smooth and things like that. So yeah. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that drier kind of oaty sort of thing on the back, and you do feel a little bit of an oaty powderiness there, but you can feel a little bit of the yeasty character sitting on top of that on the back third of your palate. So the back third of your palate feels a little bit more airy, and if you're coming from the back of the palate and moving forward, the thickness of the beer, it starts off like this, then it just kind of condenses down a wee bit, then at the border region it quite suddenly goes like this, and then the middle third of your palate is quite dense in terms of the oats and lactose and all of these kind of things. So yeah, I like how that goes together. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it says on the can here, I just noticed that it says that there's 5 IBUs in this beer, and I've been saying that about the Swedish beers. I think even if they don't have hops in them, they still end up with a little bit of bitterness, definitely. But so for me, I would, does it say on the ingredients here? Ah, it does say lupulo. Yeah, there you go. So this one does actually have hops in it. Yeah, there you go, lupulo. I know that's one word I know in Portuguese, definitely, lupulo. I think it's the same in quite a few other languages as well. But yeah, so this one does have a little bit of hop in it, so that kind of makes sense, because I was thinking you can detect a wee bit of that one here. But if this has been in the can for 9 months, quite a bit of the potency of the hops will have dropped out, in fairness. But I think adding hops into these sort of beers just gives you a little bit more depth of flavour. Brewery back home in Scotland called Vault City, they do that, and their sour beers just have such a nice rich depth of flavour to them, I would say. So yeah, adding hops into sour beers like this I think is a very good move. But yeah, on the back corners of the palate you do get a little bit of an earthiness out of the beer, and it comes across as a little bit like a noble earthiness, a little bit like a sort of German noble earthiness. But as you move further forward it gets a little bit it gets a little bit sort of herbal, and as you move towards the front corners of the palate you do get a little touch of floral aromaticity out of the beer, and round the front curve of the tongue the beer is distinctly more grassy and a little touch zesty as well. So I really like how all of that pieces together in this beer, definitely. I think that works very, very nicely indeed. So yeah, for me that works out very, very well. The green component of this beer just adds a nice little bit of depth and flavour. But let's focus on the fruity side of this beer then, because that's what the main focus should be with a big sour beer like this one. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, so as I always say, front third of your palate is where you're going to get most of the fruity side of things. But yeah, that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of an oatier thickness to this one and a wee bit of bread crust, but the baseline of that front third of your palate is definitely smooth and oaty again. The oats are playing a distinct role in this beer, absolutely. But I think the guava is the thing that sits on the bottom layer of the fruit, if you like. So you get the guava just kind of sitting there and pushing its way back towards that border region there, but then the sharper, more tart raspberries kind of sit on top of it, which is quite interesting. But the thing is, when you add fruit as an adjunct into beer, what it's always going to do is suppress a little bit of the green component of the hops and give you juiciness around the edge of the tongue. And for me, the juiciness around the edge of the tongue there comes, it's all raspberry. It's all raspberry. So for me, the guava it dominates the front third of your palate, if you like, with just a little bit of raspberry tartness on top, but then the sides of your palate are all about the kind of juicier and sharper raspberries too. So yeah, it's a really interesting point to make about this beer for sure. It's got a really nice fruity balance in it. As you go further into the aftertaste, you will get a few little elements of mango, a little touch of apricot and stuff like this. The tropical fruits I think kind of sit in that very middle part of the front third of your palate, but then you also get a slight candied strawberry out of this one as well. But in beers like this you always get little undertones of other fruits, but you can tell it's got a big raspberry tartness to it, and it's got that lovely kind of guava quality to it as well. It's got that really nice kind of smoothness that you get, but just that little bit more of a kind of greenness. If you compare it to mango, I always think of mango as a derivative of guava, guava as a derivative of mango, which is probably wrong, but I always find guava is like a very green mango actually, and it certainly comes across like that in this beer. But I just have to say, this is an awesome sour beer, and it certainly makes me very curious about some of the other Spartacus stuff. So I hope that I can get a few more from these guys somehow. Hopefully there's more comes in to Beardome. I just need to keep an eye on when it's released so that I can get it fresh and try some of the IPAs as well. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off this review, yeah, for me, this is a pretty, it's kind of bottom end to full bodied for me, the carbonation is very smooth in this one. It's got quite a slick mouthfeel, it's got a good degree of oiliness to it as well. It's one of the more oily sour beers that I've come across, but in fairness it does develop a little bit of creaminess the further you go into the aftertaste. The tartness that you get in this one, you can feel when you take the beer in, it does give you a little bit of tartness just right behind the front curve of the palate, but it just rolls out and juices out really nicely, but the raspberries just linger there and we are there. So there is a good little bit of tartness to this one as well. But like I said, there's a little touch of hoppy bitterness to this one. It tells you on the can it's 5 IBUs. And I always would have said for this beer, I think I would have got that right, that's about 5-10 IBUs at the most, something like that. But the malty base is nice and smooth, it's got a good creaminess to it, and I really like that about the beer. So yeah, lovely juicy fruity elements to it, a little bit of sharpness too, and yeah, I really like how all of this goes together. It's a lovely, it's a beautifully executed sour beer, this one, and I like how it goes about its business. So yeah, it's very good, this one. So big thumbs up to Spartacus Brewing for this, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to try any of their other beers on the back of this one. Yeah, it's taken me a little bit of time to do this review because brain's a bit tired and stuff, but I hope it's still been good nonetheless. But I always enjoy these Brazilian beers, and I hope we can keep a steady stream of them. But yeah, this one was the Dust to Dust 7% American sour beer with raspberries, guava, Madagascan vanilla and lactose in it, from Spartacus Brewing in Juiz de Fora in Brazil. Really enjoyed this, and I look forward to more of their beers. But yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Spartacus Brewing. Do give me some other Brazilian brewery recommendations as well. That would always be muchly appreciated. And if you are watching from Europe, go and check out beerdome.nl and order yourself up some Brazilian beers. A little bit more expensive, but I think worth it. I don't regret paying €7 for this beer at all, not in the slightest. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Spartacus Brewing, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skål, cheers, felicidades. See you soon.